There's a lot to be said about anime character design. It's almost one with the identity of what we recognize as anime. It's these simple forms and shape used to articulate the human body. It's an artist's interpretation of how they want to express what we see every day. Containers for lines of dialogue, and a visual identity that we associate with that dialogue. An articulate sculpture meant to portray someone who doesn't exist. This is character design. In the spring season of 2016, Studio Trigger released the show Kiznaiver. Now, it had this interesting plot, but the story itself wasn't something that held this image together. What stole the show was its fantastic visuals and its phenomenal character design. It had this constant state of eye candy. You couldn't stop watching, not because of the plot, but you wanted to see how these characters would respond, move, and interact with one another. It's capturing that essence of liveliness that we experience every day. It's something that can elicit an emotional response and something we can empathize with. That incredible feeling of being able to connect with something fictitious and made up and engineered. That's what's so special. It's that concept that makes me come back to anime over and over again. It's this unique portrayal of human emotion. It's designs that curate that concept so well and executed incredibly. So that begs the question, what makes Kiznaiver's designs so immaculate in terms of believability? There are two main underlying fundamental concepts in character design. The first is aesthetics. This is what we always cling to when we think of recognition. It's something unique, it's nuanced, and it has that sort of identity that can be associated with the artist that invented it. And by that, I mean, it's the shapes that they use. It's that constant repetitious nature of clinging to the same way to draw eyes. It's that personal understanding that allows them to manipulate variables and lead to multiple variations without losing that relationship that binds them all together. That, by definition, is style. It's something that can only be built up with experience, experimentation, and constant revisioning. With initial character designer Shiro Miwa, it's incredible to see his work in motion. Being able to see his stylized characters move, giving them a sense of life. A style that is initially bound to a static medium and translated into a dynamic one. Which leads us to our next underlying fundamental, the mechanics of character design. It's often something that's taken for granted, something you don't really think about, something when done well, you just acknowledge it is done correctly. Yone Amamai did a fantastic job encapsulating everything about Shiro Miwa's style and adapting it to an animated medium. And despite being translated by someone else, that transparency of initial design language is still able to be perceived through the new designs, outfitted with the intention of animation. When making the jump from a still image to a moving picture, there's a lot of complexity that is added to the equation. For instance, would the style be able to walk without looking awkward? Would a head be capable of sustaining a silhouette despite changing its angle? Would the drawn anatomy be able to make the movements required in order to fulfill a scene? Designs have inherent strengths and weaknesses, and a mechanical designer or a character designer has to be capable of understanding what their strengths and weaknesses are at any given moment, making adjustments, changes, and alterations for the sake of visual continuity. And when you sandwich all of those things together, what you're left with is an incredible cast of individuality. That sense that each person sustains their own visual qualities that reflect their unseen inner monologue. And in that brief moment of being lost in the visual fidelity, you forget none of these people exist.